You're listening to Science for Soundness, the podcast. This is not your usual podcast. This is a journey, and as with any journey, I don't know yet where this one is going. If anything, I'm hoping to inspire you to take the first step, even if it's into the unknown, even if you don't know where you're going and you do it scared. Hi, I'm Steffi. I'm an equine scientist and equine therapist. I've made it my mission to support horse owners on their individual journey of horse-human connection and personal growth. I want you to know that I'm with you on this one. Think of me as a friendly voice, a reminder to stay the course, to keep going, keep listening to yourself and to your horse, even when the going gets tough. Let's do this. Hello, friend, and welcome back to Science for Soundness, the podcast. Today is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. Today we're going to talk about horsemanship in a sense of, well, you will see by the end of the episode, in the wider sense, I guess. And particularly we're going to talk about the housing situation for your horses, so equine husbandry, which in my world is a huge part of horsemanship. And the episode title, Stable Doesn't Mean Sound, I guess is a little bit, it's supposed to make you think a little bit, but it's been kind of the topic of the last few weeks that's come my direction, sessions that I've worked with people on, conversations I've had, discussions that I witnessed, and they all had one topic at frontline center, basically. It was people not being happy with the way that the horses were stabled and the way the stable was managed in order to accommodate the horses' welfare. So stabled or stable doesn't mean sound, and it doesn't matter if this is a paddock trail or if this is a box or a box with a paddock or just a paddock. It doesn't even matter because every horse is unique and they all have different unique needs. So choosing the husbandry method for your horse and is like super important, of course, but should be for their well-being, should be for their welfare and not our human convenience. And like I said, this is a huge part of horsemanship, the way that I see it, because if we don't manage to give our horses a life that's worth living, then the other hours, let's say 23, 22 hours of the day that we're not present with our horses is not actually a life worth living. So there we are. Today, hopefully, we're just going to dive into this, and hopefully this will be a grounded conversation about what truly matters when choosing where and how your horse should live, and why the other 23 out or 22 hours, the way I just said, of their day shape everything about your relationship as well, about your training outcomes and their emotional, mental, physical, and also spiritual well-being. So let's dive on in. I told you how much social soundness is part of the pillars of soundness now, and why it's so important to look out for that, because social soundness really plays a key role when we're looking for that safety, that connection within that herd environment. And that should be the foundation of social engagement in general. There is a whole podcast episode on it, so please check out that episode if you want to learn more about this pillar of soundness. But just in general, I want you to bear that in mind. Horses are designed to be social creatures. They want and need social environments, herd dynamics in order to thrive, and that's where we start. There is this thing I witness a lot, and I guess it depends on which direction you want to look at this from. So this is just my perspective I'm offering you here. You don't have to take it. You can just play with it. You don't have to do anything with it, basically. And if this topic feels triggering in any way, shape, or form, then, I just want to gently invite you to dive into why that may be, because personally, I've been in a situation where my horses were in a stable that I wasn't 100% happy with. And let me tell you, it does make a difference. And me personally, I wasn't 100% happy with the situation for my horses. Like, I could not care less about the human facilities aspect of it. I do care 100% about what my horse's facilities look like. But this is the thing, right? We often choose based on convenience, cost, or community for ourselves. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. All I'm saying is that sometimes that means that it is maybe not the best for this particular horse. So I totally understand that we want people around us. We want to have this community aspect in a stable where we feel safe and seen and heard, and where we just simply feel supported, where we're not on our own, left to our own devices with our horses, especially when things get tricky. You want to feel like you have a support network. And like I said, I totally get that. I would absolutely love, for every one of you to have this. And often this comes at a cost, and it comes at the cost of choosing an environment for our horses that might not be ideal. And there is no such thing as the ideal stable out there, I suppose, as, depending on the way you look at it. Often you go places with your horses where you're not allowed to have a say in the way things are done, where you're not allowed to shape decisions that are really, having an impact on your horses. So I totally understand why there has to be a compromise in some, way, shape, or form. There is this myth of what good, air quotes, good facilities should look like. And good facilities should have, covered arenas. They should have hot water. They should have lockers. And whilst that is all desirable and beautiful if you have it, that is not actually what the horse needs. So good facilities technically should mean the freedom to roam for your horse, the freedom to play and, bolt and bronc and do things with other friends, with herd members. It should offer a herd, full stop. So I've experienced, and this is the experience I've had when I said where I wasn't 100% happy with, the people were lovely. Technically, the facilities were lovely, but my horse was kept in singular confinement, and I wasn't happy with that. She had huge amounts of space, but she was still separated from other horses with one electric wire. And it doesn't matter if there is just one electric wire and they can say hi over the fence. That's not the way horses are created. They are designed to be herd animals, and they're designed to browse in a herd. And, anybody who's trying to tell you anything different, that has nothing to do with the horse's welfare in the center of the conversation. That's basically good facilities for humans. And whilst I am incredibly lucky to have not hot water, not a covered arena, but I do have, a tack room and a feed room and things like that, I made compromises on things such as, like I just mentioned, the covered arena. I have a grassy arena. I am not blessed with hot water at the stable. I have to bring it or use the kettle if I want it there. And that also means that I don't wash my horses every day. It means that, there are things that are just done differently, and that is okay for me. Doesn't mean it has to be okay for you. But let's just think about this myth of what good facilities, again in air quotes, would look like for the actual horse, not for the human. And I've mentioned it before, but there is this 23-1 or 22-2 ratio. Horses spend the vast majority of their time not with you, not with us. So let that sink in. The majority of their day is spent the way you have them kept or you keep them yourself. And that is not necessarily with you. Even if you live on site and you see your horse outside, they're still not spending 24 hours with you because you live in your quarters and they live outside. So we need to talk about this, because what happens in those hours when they're not with you matters more than we think. For digestion, for regulation, emotional regulation, co-regulation with herd members, herd connection, movement in general, and mental stimulation. Everything matters. Everything matters so much more than we think. And if you deprive a horse of this, it could have negative impacts. It could mean that your horse starts to be really agitated all of a sudden. Or you might find that your horse appears really dysregulated a lot and you don't quite know why that might be. Or if you have, one herd member that doesn't really fit in, or if you have a herd that doesn't really take your horse on, or if you have a facility that is restricting the movement because they don't have space enough, then, these are all aspects we need to think about, because these 22, 23 hours matter the most. And like I said, there is this thing: horses should have the freedom to roam. They should have the freedom to move, basically, and move at the pace that they would want to move in. They should be able to play if they want to play, to mutual groom if they want to do that, to forage around, so to have a little browse and walk. And if you ever have witnessed a herd in a healthy herd, let's just say that, then you will have seen that they move a lot. And it's not what we want to maybe see, this cantering around and playing and bucking, and they do that too, yes, but not a lot. This is usually just when they kick in a flight response, or when geldings or stallions get playful with each other. But generally, what you will have is a really beautiful rhythm that the herd lives together, and it's kind of in sync with the time of the day, and it's in sync with their own little routine, and it's not about the feeding time that the human dictates. It's more about the natural rhythm that just comes with it. And it's just such a beautiful thing to witness. So you will see horses browse, and they will not run around like I just said. They will just gently move themselves and have a little nibble here, go over there, have a little look over there, what's there, nibble over there, and we'll just continue to browse like that. And that is the healthiest thing you could offer your horse. I do understand that we can not always get that 100% right, because I do understand, and that's also part of the reason why for a long time I've kept my horses myself, because I couldn't find 100% what I was looking for. I've had 2 beautiful yards that I was on, where everything worked out beautifully, but other than that, I wasn't so lucky. So since I've kept my horses myself, I was able to design their environment the way that I think they need. But the thing is, the quality of life is really more important to, or their quality of life, not the quality, but their quality of life is really more important to me than the facilities that I get. So these 23, 22 hours matter the most. And there are just a few little things you can look out for. So you could look out for turnout time. Do your horses actually get turned out with other horses? If you choose to keep your horse in a stable, I'm not saying this is a horrible thing. Some horses actually might prefer that and thrive there compared to others. If you can, I would always advise to try and keep your horses outdoors, so they have a free choice. They can go in and out and eat or not eat as they want. But if you keep your horse in a stable, make sure they get turnout time. Make sure they get to go outside. Make sure they have access to forage, good quality hay, good quality pastures. So not those overgrazed, really short, stubby, moldy pastures that you get when they're totally overgrazed over years, but actual pasture management that diversifies the grasses that are there and makes sure that these are low in fructane, for example, so that it's actually well thought out for horses. Make sure that they have social contact. So like I just said, a herd, space to move. I really want to see my horses being able to move at all paces. So whatever your horse is, whatever gaits they can do, I want to see them do all of these gaits in the premises. That's the ideal in my world. Footing is another point. If they just constantly stand in the mud, that's not the greatest thing in the world, because that will get you other issues with their feet. Horses aren't designed to just stand around all the time. Their hoofs want to just go over different surfaces. So if there is a possibility to move them over different surfaces, that's cool. How could that be a possibility? Maybe. But that's something to look out for. There is also enrichment. So are there any any ways of enriching the horses' lives? So is there, for example, different hay stations, or do they have different areas where they can do different things? So maybe there is different footing with different purposes. So there might be wood chip as a toilet. There might be a sand area where they can all sleep, or it might be an indoor space where there is a straw bed where they can lie down, just little things to look out for. So shelter is super important as well. You want your horses to be able to shelter from the sun, from the wind, from the rain. Personally, I've made the experience that the wind and the sun are more important to be sheltered from than the actual rain, which might surprise you. But that is what I've observed for a long time, actually. The horses shelter more from the wind and the sun than the actual rain. Then the one thing I would try and do is to assess a new stable or a prospective stable from your horse's perspective, not from your perspective. So what would those 22, 23 hours look like? Just think about that. And like I said, I do understand that you can't always have the ideal stable. Sometimes there has to be a compromise. There have to be this workable balance for you and your horse. And you can absolutely find that. There is absolutely a way where you can go to a place where okay, maybe they have a small herd and maybe the movement isn't as elaborate as you would like it to be, but they still have freedom of choice, and maybe they have access to forage and access to a shelter, and there are a few other things that really work out well, and they have really big pastures instead, for the summer months, or whatever it is for you. There is always a balance to be found. And that's why I said it's, everybody has their preferences. And of course, if you have the option to dream up the perfect stable, do that. But if you have to find something in the meantime, then there is always a balance to be found. As long as you keep your horse at the center of that balance, I'm pretty sure that's going to be great. And then you might also want to think about, if you can't have this ideal space, how you can just enrich or support your horse, even when you're limited by location or logistics. So there are little things we can do here and there in order to give them a little more enrichment in their everyday lives. And it doesn't have to be super complicated. It could be something as simple as adding a few more hay stations so that there is more movement encouraged, or giving them one of these little hay balls that you can get, and you can just throw that in there with them, and that gives them something to do. And yes, that doesn't mimic the real life scenario, but if you are having to have a compromise and if you're trying to strike that balance, then that is a pretty good way to just get that done. And then I really just want to shine a light also on the cost of poor environments for your horse, because that is basically the topic that's been come my direction over the last 2 weeks. People approaching me with really big issues for their horses in places that were supposedly really perfect and nice, and people being really upset for their horses. And I feel that so much. It is a horrible place to be in, because you don't know, if you move them to a new place, how that's going to go. You don't know if they're going to find friends. You don't know if they're going to find that rhythm with the herd. You don't know if they're going to be able to fit into that. And you don't even know if the new stable then will do everything they promise they will do, because sometimes people change and they don't. But it's really important to try and find an environment that allows your horse to be with friends, have forage, have shelter, and have the freedom to move, because otherwise it really can keep horses stuck in a state of survival. It can really start to cause problems, behavioral problems, that you may not have thought of before, because that never was an issue. But like I mentioned at the beginning, they might arise from this poor environment. And I'm just going to say that And just leave that here because you can all think about these things for yourselves. I cannot tell you enough how regulating and beautiful a healthy herd will be for your horse, how healing that will be for your horse. And if you found that, you will see the difference. You will absolutely see the difference, because a lack of movement can spill into behavior and create behaviors that you might not want to see during that 1 or 2 hours with you, or in general, but it might happen because your horse needs more movement, or because your horse is really depressed like Sun was, or because your horse is super agitated because it never gets to rest. Housing, environment, equine husbandry is a huge, massive topic, which is why I said it is part of horsemanship for me. And like I also mentioned, hopefully multiple times, this is not a blame game. So I hope that this is just a gentle invitation to reflect on your own horses, stabling, on their own environment, your own environment. And I really feel that if we claim to love our horses, our decisions should reflect their needs, not just our own preferences. And yes, that might sting a little bit, and I've been there. And sometimes, like I said, you will find that you have to strike a balance, but I promise you can 100% find that balance in a way that serves your horse and yourself. So before I end today's episode, I just want to leave you with a little thought. What would change if you made decisions from the perspective of what would serve your horse's nervous system? So what do they need in order to feel calm and grounded and regulated and balanced in their lives? What would change if you made decisions from that standpoint? If you feel like diving deeper into any and all of this, I actually have a huge chapter on the environment, on equine husbandry, in Leaving Survival Mode, Finding Connection. You get access to this course in my membership area. There are going to be some changes around that. So if you want to join us, if you use the code podcast upon checkout, you save 10 euros off your first month of the membership. We would love to see you in there. It is a place where lifestyle, soundness, co-regulation, and everything that has to do with it are taught in depth. So this was just a little insight, and it's really been on my mind because people who I really care about have approached me, and I could not believe how much of a topic this is at the moment. And I get it, the horses are going to be on the pastures again, and different stables handle that very differently. The hay quality is a huge topic. I mean, there's so much we could go into just riffing off of that. So I just really wanted to share with you that the 22, 23 hours matter for your horse. And if you love your horse, like I know you do, then you will try and find them an environment that serves them first and foremost. Alrighty, friends, I will see you next time, and I would love to see you in the membership. Hi, friend. I hope you found something in this episode that resonated with you. I'm beyond grateful that you hung out with me today for a little while, and I do hope that you come along for the ride. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast, and if you feel like it, leave a review. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you have any questions or would like me to talk about a certain topic, check the show notes for ways to get in touch. I can't wait for next time. You got this.